Welcome to ESVN, the Emma Sports Vigilant Network show. My name is Emma Vigilant, and you know what to do, everybody. Subscribe at youtube.com/ESVN show. Put on push notifications so you know when we're going live. Like this stream. Rate us 5 stars wherever you're listening to or watching this. And if you have a remark, a pointed remark, you can leave it below in the comment section. And you can say hello to Bradley Alsop, wherever. Right now, in the comment section, on the street, when he's having a private conversation.
Don't you dare say hi to me when I'm having a private conversation.
Who would you be having a private conversation with?
My attorneys.
Your
my cybersecurity experts.
Yes. I'm sorry. We won't interrupt you when you're having those high-level important meetings.
My private security liaisons.
Right. Bradley does moonlight as a healthcare CEO.
Yeah, due to all the potentials for harassment that could befall me.
Did you use harassment in that particular way, just like to make yourself sound a little bit more sophisticated, or was that what we were doing there? Okay, so this is really our last full show of the year, like the calendar year.
Whoa!
Because next week we're off, and the week after we're kind of off too. We are back the Thursday the 2nd, so we won't it won't be a full 2 weeks away, but it'll be nearly 2 weeks away. Anyway, so we're doing a little celebration. We just figured it out. I'm just, one beer. That's okay, even though it's a Monday. It's been a long year. Ready?
It sure has.
3, 2, 1. Oh, how satisfying is that? Yeah. And then you just messed up your mic.
Are we having fun yet?
We are, and we need chemicals to have fun. Not always. But perhaps we need to just break up the monotony. We will get into the NFL in just a second, but that is a very cool Vampire Weekend shirt.
Thank you.
You know that Vampire Weekend is from Montclair, New Jersey, which is,
of course.
Not technically my hometown, although technically my hometown because we lived there half of my childhood, and then we moved to the town over, Glen Ridge.
Which I think they went to that high school, I'm pretty sure.
Yes.
So definitely you're actually really in I'm in
Vampire Weekend country.
Exactly.
Like truly probably grew up within 3 miles
country
of the Vampire Weekend crew. Glad to be able to own them. The claim to fame for my actual town, Glen Ridge, is that Tom Cruise is from there.
Oh.
And I don't like to own that. Even though he moved there later because there were some weird, he was from, I think, the Midwest, and that's when he was really into Catholicism, which is a whole different deep dive into his Scientology. We don't need to go down that road. Anyway, hello, Bradley. Did you enjoy the games yesterday?
Yes, question mark.
Go Jets!
Yes. I mean, it's as much as the cynic in me is it's so insignificant that I think everybody on NFL Twitter who is more, I think, a little bit more credulous than I am, and I'm not trying not to paint with too broad a brush, but people being whoa, classic Rodgers and Adams connection. I'm like, guys, the dream is over.
Even if they're connected,
let's relax. We beat the Mac Jones led Jaguars with one of the worst defenses in the league. I refuse to be even remotely excited or have any sort of real positive emotion towards that victory. If anything, it's putting us. It's us sliding down the draft order. I
mean, let's just be real. The Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams connection. Why should we celebrate that? It's like being able to, at this point in the year 2024, connect via dial-up.
Right. It's exactly right. It's like watching a VCR.
It's it still works.
Oh.
Okay.
Okay.
No utility for this whatsoever.
This works. Okay. Now they're 3-10. Another 4-10. Okay.
All right. Yeah.
Okay.
Back to the drawing board.
Right.
Let's talk about the good teams for a second, and we'll leave our lowly, pathetic
we'll exit
teams.
the tri-state area.
Hoi. Josh Allen, just give it to him now. Give him the MVP. It's ridiculous he hasn't had one already. He deserves it so much this year. I can't believe what we're even seeing with him. This is Patrick Mahomes, the first year he won the Super Bowl kind of numbers, when he was with Tyreek Hill, except Josh Allen doesn't have Tyreek Hill, and he does it more on the ground with his legs. Yesterday, he threw for 362 yards. He threw for 2 touchdowns. He also rushed for 68 yards and 2 touchdowns. He has 14 touchdowns in the last 3 games 7 passing, 6 rushing, and 1 that he passed to himself for a receiving touchdown. The Bills have scored 90 points total in their past 2 games. They have now put up 30 more points in 8 straight, which is tying the record in NFL history. The last team to do it was the 2013 Broncos. The 2013 Broncos, let me look up that team there. Because was that the year that they lost or won the Super Bowl? It was the year that they lost the Super Bowl to the Seahawks when they got blown out. I remember watching that in my sorority house. I was the only one that cared. Anyway, but like that year was a historic offense with when
I think that's why it was so weird, because it was the Broncos Seahawks matchup was like touted as like the number 1 offense versus the number 1 defense, and the defense team dropped 43 to the offense team's 8. Right.
It was such a bizarre and uninspiring
unanticipated blowout by the team that was supposed to be like the most like volcanic offense.
Exactly. So it's just he's on a historic pace. If they score 30 or more in the next game, I think that they're gonna beat longest streak in NFL history. Josh Allen's now the first player in the history of the NFL with at least 2 passing touchdowns and 2 rushing touchdowns in consecutive games. He's also the first ever quarterback to do that 3 times in the exact same season. He is the only quarterback in the NFL right now who has 0 picks, fumbles, or sacks in 3 straight games. Also a credit to that awesome offensive line that has really been, I think, like the heart and soul of that Bills team this year in a really underrated way. And it also causes like an exciting kind of rushing attack that isn't led just by Josh Allen, as it had been in the Devin Singletary years, honestly.
Yeah, James Cook also had a great game
105
yesterday.
yards on 14 carries. So
with
they were just
1 rushing touchdown that was like he just had an incredible body control to like basically almost like fall over, being like parallel to the ground, like still managing to, reset himself and keep going to get into the end zone.
And it sucks that the Bills have had all these injuries, and hopefully the Lions have had all these injuries, and hopefully they can get healthier. We'll talk about that in just a second. But the Bills had a million injuries on offense yesterday. On defense yesterday as well. And they were, it ended up, yes, being a shootout, but no one is better at winning a shootout than the Bills right now. Like, the Rams, they won that game against the 49ers on Thursday Night Football, but that was a defensive struggle. They kind of caught lightning in a bottle, I think, against the Bills in the game last week, in part because the Bills had just won their division. After doing that, then they get to go all the way across the country to L.A. A lot of players live in L.A. in the offseason. Maybe they were seeing friends. Maybe they were seeing family. Like, I don't know. I see that as more of a fluke than what we saw yesterday from the Bills, which shows that they can hang with anybody.
And I mean, you also look at kind of like, obviously we have to account for the weather conditions for that Thursday night game, but like the 2 weeks in a row where the Bills scoring like 80 points in 2 games, and then the Rams turning around and winning like maybe the most disgusting game of the year in like a 12-7 0 touchdown like shit fest. And obviously rain was a factor, but I'm just saying, like, it looks as if this is a consistent output for the Bills offense right now. That like even with injuries, that against a very like solid, well coached, kind of aggressive and tenacious defense in the Lions, like kind of having no problem. I mean, of course the Lions, being the Lions offense, were able to make it close as the game kept going, but they were up 2 to 3 scores in the first half.
Yeah.
Pretty comfortably for a while, until Amon-Ra St. Brown had that, broke away for that touchdown to kind of get them within.
That was pretty incredible.
To bring them back to actually have a chance to get to get back in the game. But they were out in front like early, and sort of, I mean, as much as the final outcome was close, it was mostly the Lions like playing catch up as opposed to the Bills sort of like giving it away for whatever,
Well, I mean, the rushing attempts, David Montgomery now out for the year, another injury for them.
That is very, very, very that is very concerning and potentially decisive outcome for the Lions.
I don't know. I mean, I feel for them. They can still run it as long as they can get a bruiser to complement Jahmyr Gibbs, but it sucks for him regardless. Like, even if they end up winning the Super Bowl, I just feel badly for David Montgomery,
he's really one of the best backs in the league.
Yeah, such a class act, and he does it in a really unsexy way, but he can run the ball. But like, they were held to 35 rushing yards on 13 attempts. And so then they had to rely on Jared Goff throwing the ball. And if you want to get into a throwing the ball contest with Josh Allen versus Jared Goff, I'm sorry. We know who's going to win that. You need a guy like, I'm sorry to trigger you guys, Lions fans, but Matthew Stafford, who can improvise and sling it around and has more arm talent than
and
a
if the
guy
pocket
like
breaks
Jared
down,
Goff.
that you can can create something like it's It's...
And I mean, like, to be fair to the Lions, they are so banged up on defense that I almost can't even muster like a way to describe it. Like, now it looks like so Carlton Davis out with a jaw injury. Alan McNeil, I guess now that he is out for the rest of the year, he's one of their defensive tackles. Adam Schefter just reported that he suffered a torn ACL. Like Khalil Dorsey also out. They're really hurting.
The front seven is so battered. Like
no Marcus Davenport,
no
who they
Hutchinson.
Lost in September.
Right.
No Aiden Hutchinson, who could maybe come back if they go to the Super Bowl.
But has been missing for the last, I think, probably 7 or 8 weeks at this point. And then now McNeil, who was a real surprise kind of find for them last season, has kind of only really expanded upon his really great play from the season before. So like really brutal to lose him as well.
Really brutal to lose him. So I'm sorry for the Lions fans, but I gotta say, it is very interesting and fun to watch what's going to happen in this stacked NFC North, which is just like more so, honestly, for me than even the years with the AFC North being like with the Ravens and the Bengals and like, I guess 2 years ago or something like that. I still think this is more dominant because what we saw from the Packers last night, for example, is that they can win a million different ways. They got 7 sacks home from 6 different rushers in that game last night on Sunday Night Football, and they kind of just dominated the Seahawks from the get-go.
It was pretty like one-sided even before Geno Smith went out with the injury. Like truly, like, they were up like 17-3. And basically at the start of the second quarter, like it was
Josh Jacobs was ripping off runs like 8 yards, 17 yards. 11 just from the beginning.
The schematic advantage on the run for the run game with Matt LaFleur and how that offensive line and the other the other very willing and secondary blockers in the from the skill position blocking from the skill position players as well as Jacobs and his running ability in this system is just like it's almost like a cheat code. Like this is against the Seahawks defense, who we were touting and talking about how they've really stepped up, and they were just carving through them the whole game, basically.
One of the coaches of the year is in the NFC North, and I honestly can't decide who it should be. It could be Kevin O'Connell. Look at what he has done with Sam Darnold. Right. It could be Matt LaFleur, who has kept the team afloat.
I kind of still think my money's on LaFleur, even with Campbell as well, only because of the Malik Willis stuff.
Yeah, I mean, but like, did they lose a game when Malik Willis was starting? They lost all their games with Jordan Love.
I think I think they were 3-1 with Willis, if I'm not mistaken, looking back before Love came back. But I just mean like, even I know it was early in the season, so it's almost kind of an afterthought because so much can change. But like, the idea of finding an offensive game script and scheme that works for a guy who, by all accounts, with like everywhere else he had been before, was basically deemed like a literally and figuratively a non-starter, like an actual like unplayable quarterback. Right. And LaFleur was like, no, that's fine, we can use him, and he found ways to give him like easy looks to throw touchdowns and make things work on the ground for him. Like, that is an improbable feat. I guess the only other person
that's the way you think, but MVP voters are going to look at the record and they may say if you finish third in your division, they're not going to consider you for coach of the year. Like,
but the only other person I would consider outside of the NFC North is Mike Tomlin, obviously.
Oh yes.
But as we've said with like as goes with Greg Popovich, and Mike Tomlin sort of in their own. It's like you could kind of give them their own shrine and be like,
But
you could probably give it to him, but maybe you'll give it to somebody
But
else.
this may be the year where people figure it out, where it's like, oh, the Steelers were middling for reasons that hadn't anything to do with Mike Tomlin. It's just that since Big Ben left and when he was declining, their quarterback play was atrocious. And now they have an offensive coordinator who kind of knows what he's doing.
And has a vision.
Now they have a quarterback, Russell Wilson, who is playing much better and back to his vintage self, and he can run offense like this one, and he can throw some nice deep balls, right? Like now, okay, Mike Tomlin, it's obvious that like he can really coach a team. So
right, give him like literally like a 25% talent bump, and you're like, oh wow, right, that's why we're like, oh my god, 9-8 for this dog shit team. It's
right?
like, oh yeah. give him like something give him anything to work with that's better than Kenny Pickett, and like and he can figure something out that's much more entertaining and better than the product from last year.
Yeah, and I guess like that's kind of an easy way for us to we didn't. But let's just wrap up on the Seahawks game. The Seahawks are who we thought they were. I mean, they've had a nice year. I don't like that offense. I know they throw at a really high rate, but it's not efficient, and it sucks with Kenneth Walker not playing. But there's just something about the offense that feels, and I know their coordinator from Washington, whatever, it feels very college.
I also just think there's still, even though I do think they've used play action and some motion a little bit more than they usually do, there just still to me is not nearly enough of like, Geno Smith should not be having to play like Joe Burrow does or Josh Allen does, where like he's basically always an empty. There's very little motion going on. He doesn't have a lot of like alerts or like quick outs that like give him some sense of respite from a lot of the other heavy lifting that he's doing. And don't get me wrong, I've always said this, it's so fun to watch Geno Smith like uncork like these insane 50-yard balls that go into like a keyhole basically in terms of how accurate they are, but like it's a dangerous game to play all the time, and I think
Collinsworth remarks on it last night. He struggles in the red zone, so you need to help him out down there. In the
sense of there needs to be easy buttons that aren't just okay. Geno is going to figure this out inevitably, because when it works, it's incredible to watch. When it doesn't, they seem hapless almost. It seems a little bit. They seem lost almost a little bit.
Yeah.
And as you're saying, obviously, Kenneth Walker being out is a big obstacle. And the offensive line is extremely banged up. I mean, they lost their like second string center yesterday, and they had to put in their third string center. So like I understand that, but I think I think structurally that's a problem I feel like we've been noticing when they're not performing well on offense.
Right. And their offensive line is struggling. Like Charles Cross really struggled last night. They couldn't protect either Howell nor Geno Smith. Obviously, he got injured as well. And now the Rams are in pole position to take the division. And the thing is so they play the Jets next week, which I think you can pencil in the Rams hopefully winning that game for their sake and for your sake. We want them to tank. Rams Cardinals at home, and then Rams Seahawks at home. They have the tiebreaker right now because they beat the Seahawks earlier in the year. But the Seahawks play the Vikings next week, which like I think that's going to be a really tough game for them. The Bears and then the Rams. It could come down to that game, but it would require the Rams dropping one of their next two, in my view. The Jets or the Cardinals. And the Cardinals maybe. We'll see.
Do we have a prognosis on Geno or not yet?
Not that I'm seeing so far.
And who was I didn't even I missed who the backup is.
It's Sam Howell. Yeah.
Oh, okay, fine, right. We've seen him. We've seen Sam Howell before.
Yeah. No, Sam Howell, and when he got into the game, it was quite clear how much better Geno Smith is. So
Howell is like a a literal loose cannon.
Right. And so the Seahawks, I'm not exciting season for them. Hopefully they win on the other side of like if they would have to lose out if they are not going to have a winning season. But I would prefer that the Rams make the playoffs just because I just think they are a more potent team. And especially with Cooper Kupp and Puka Nacua back and playing well.
I just think if Geno is out for the rest of the season, I can't really see how they could potentially make up or at least kind of stand their ground without Geno behind center, because he's just so crucial to anything that they do on offense, and without Kenneth Walker and with the offensive line injuries. And I agree with you. I just think given in terms of health and in terms of offensive play, how the Rams have looked, I'd almost rather see them maybe give a little bit of a jump scare almost to some of these, like, higher tier NFC teams, as opposed to kind of a limping Seahawks team.
Again, they can, if the Lions hold on to win their division, but maybe they fall to the 2 seed and the Eagles jump them for the 1 seed or something like that. They could face well, actually no, the Rams, if the Rams won their division, if the Rams won their division and they're the 4 seed, which would be the most likely situation because they'll have the worst record, the NFC West, whoever wins that division. Then they could, and the Lions falter against the Vikings, the Lions would be the 5 seed. And that would be another matchup with Jared Goff
versus Matthew
Stafford. This time, Goff going to LA.
Right.
Back again. So that could be a fascinating wrinkle on that front. But I still want the Lions to win the division. I want them to get a bye so that they can get a little bit healthier.
They can recuperate a little bit.
Because this is the people's team. Although at the same time, I just like all of those NFC North teams that are in competition right now. I like the Packers. I like how LaFleur is he's almost Tomlin Jr. He's underrated even though he hasn't won a Super Bowl. I get it. But he's every year they're competitive. And Kevin O'Connell, when J.J. McCarthy went out to start the year, everyone was saying how their season is over. Mm-hmm. And he ended up turning it around, and he's been so good every year that they've been there. So O'Connell, I don't know. For me, it would be O'Connell or Mike Tomlin for Coach of the Year, in my humble opinion. So I think we mentioned the Bills. We talked a little bit about that. Josh Allen for MVP. And you mentioned the Steelers. So the Steelers did lose against the Eagles over the weekend, but they locked up a playoff spot in the process somehow because they're still the number 3 seed. They have the tiebreaker against the Baltimore Ravens. And they have a better record than the Ravens, if I'm not mistaken. But now I got to look that up. Steelers record, they have 4 losses. Yes, the Ravens have 5. So I'm not sure about the tiebreaker, but at the very least, they're a game ahead. They clinched a playoff spot, so they'll be going to the postseason even if they don't win the division and the Ravens do. The Dolphins and the Colts losing made that a possibility. Next week, they play the Ravens, and that will be a fascinating game to determine whether or not they hold on to the division. But I don't have too much to say about the Steelers in particular. TJ Watt, it looks like he's going to be okay. They're a good team. They're definitely, I think, in the top 7 of the playoff teams that could possibly win the Super Bowl. But the reality is the Eagles are the story here. And it's that they are winning right now despite immense dysfunction in their locker room. Have you been hearing these stories about Jalen Hurts? About how he doesn't take the same team plane home and he flies home with the owner?
Well, and there was obviously it's tough that I feel like this is sort of how I feel, where I don't always, unless you're a team that ultimately wins a championship. I'm thinking about the last season, the last championship that the Warriors won, for example. Mm-hmm. You can sort of justify all that discord because even though you're winning a lot, the vibes seem bad, but if ultimately it leads to a championship, it doesn't really matter. Obviously, we've seen what's happened in the aftermath, which is in terms of how much that core kind of fracturing and how all of that played out. But I never love in the regular season getting so many notifications from Bleacher Report about being strong rift between quarterback and wide receiver, and now a defensive end is yeah, they don't like each other, and everyone's no, he didn't mean it like that, and it's okay, now he has to go and parade himself around the locker room being I am so sorry that I said that. It's just guys, it is wild. It is always, I think, almost more discordant to me as a fan and a viewer to see when the vibes on the Jets are this bad. I get that they suck. And people are checked out. They fired a coach. They fired a GM. That's like a petri dish for bad vibes. When you're playing this good, it's weird to me to be seemingly this unhappy about it.
But remember, they were playing that good and then fell off a cliff after they'd hit. Now they've gotten more wins than they got last year. They got to 11 wins and then completely collapsed. But now it just feels like that's carryover from last year, and we still don't know the specifics of it. I heard some details, like Chris Sims was on Le Batard and said how there's issues with other players in Jalen Hurts. It's not just AJ Brown. And Brandon Graham apparently revealed too much, just very slightly, saying that they had a disagreement. Now, we don't know when that dates back to, right? It seems quite obvious that it was at least at some point last year. And there have been people that have been looking at film, seeing that AJ Brown is open, but the ball's not getting thrown to him. And they're still winning games. We'll see.
And you know, they connected with each other yesterday.
But doesn't that say it all? After shit hits the fan, then he's like throwing to AJ Brown, and then they're doing a little handshake. I mean, come on, guys. Like, I hate the performative stuff, but at the same, like, if Jalen Hurts, we remarked on his body language. Remember in that game against the Buccaneers last year in the wild card round, and his body language is still pretty bad. Like, last game they played better, but it seems like he is alienated from the locker room to a certain degree, which is not something I would have expected. But he does have that like stoic kind of self-serious thing going on. And
AJ Brown's the opposite of that. He's quite like bombastic and
also just like well known as a very well liked
also everyone loves him.
Non-diva wide receiver. So I guess I'm inclined to take AJ Brown's side on this front, especially because it's true. It's true. Like there are issues. There are issues in the locker room, and you know, anybody that has ever covered, I don't know, other stories like this about like intrigue and gossip between parties, and then people come out and like they overwhelmingly say like no, there's nothing to see here. Reporters don't report these things without sources. I'm sorry. It's just like you need that kind of due diligence for the most part, unless there's a contradiction that comes later. They can probably still win like this. They probably can, because they're
doing it already.
They're the most talented team in football.
Right.
But you wonder what the limits of that are. You wonder. And the thing is like, they could almost win right now with the way that their defense is playing alone. Like, Jalen Carter's all over the field. He's getting into it with Nick Sirianni on the sideline. Like,
because he kind of bonked the guy.
I know that they may not fire Sirianni, and they probably won't after such a successful season, regardless of the outcome. They could use a guy like Mike Vrabel. Like, if that vacancy opens up, it'll become the most coveted spot in the league because of the pedigree of that roster. But they could use a guy that could come in and be like just a veteran general that gets these guys more disciplined. Because there's only so far they can go on talent alone. And as it stands with the Lions injuries and everything like that, I think they're the most talented team in the NFL. And I don't necessarily think it's close.
And I think especially in the trenches, as you were saying, on both sides, it's like they barely like the big concern I feel like going from last year to this year with the offensive line was like the concern about what vacancy Jason Kelce would leave. And of course it's a big one, but then you see how much they've been able to, because obviously Jeff Stoutland is like a miracle worker, but like you see the growth that Mekhi Becton has exhibited leaving the Jets for the Eagles, getting moved over to guard from tackle, and him and the double teams, the overpowering double teams that him and Cam Jurgens, who's the person who replaced Jason Kelce at center, can get going for this run game for Saquon. Like, it's a team that's built so solidly in the trenches, and with these young secondary players and DeJean and Quinyon Mitchell, like that second.
DeJean even lost a fumble when he was punt returning, by the way. So like, my point is just like they overcame that as well, and they still won the game.
Right. It's like even and that's like, to be some rookie foibles potentially, but it's even the fact that they have the potential answers to the older parts of their secondary, like the independent of all of this roster is still, by Howie Roseman, extremely well constructed.
Yeah.
They know how to rehabilitate some of these players, like Zach Bond from the Saints coming over at linebacker. All that is to say, the reason I'm effusive about that in terms of the talent, how well this team is constructed, it just like literally I always just get a little bit my senses tingle a little bit when I see a great team like kind of like not having a good time.
Well,
And the Warriors were not having a good time when Draymond Green punched Jordan Poole. Like, they weren't. Like, but they still won everything. I mean, they still won a great number of games and beat like a great Celtics team to win their last title.
the 1986 Giants, Lawrence Taylor and Phil Simms hated each other. Lawrence Taylor and Phil Simms were not getting along. That was the first year that the Giants won the Super Bowl in their franchise history. Lawrence Taylor and Bill Parcells not getting along. And honestly, this Eagles team reminds me a lot of that past like Giants team. I mean, you can draw the parallels to when Nick Foles won the Super Bowl for them. That's more the 91 Giants, but in relief of Carson Wentz at the time, that was like Hofstadler coming in and playing in 91 in relief of Phil Simms, who Carson Wentz kind of plays like him. And we'll get to Carson Wentz in just a second because he's relevant once again as the backup to Mahomes. But they can still 100% win the Super Bowl like this. It's just something to note. And I still think, and I don't know if it's Jalen Hurts or if it's Kellen Moore or if it's a combination of both. It's like they don't necessarily do that much on offense in terms of motion either. It's like power football. It's almost old school. Can they win like that? If a team has a defensive line that can counter it, we shall see. Speaking of the Chiefs, Chiefs beat the Browns. They just completely confounded Jameis Winston to a point where DTR had to come in later on. But the big story out of this is that Patrick Mahomes got injured. High ankle sprain. Pretty significant. He's had issues with ankle sprains in the past, and he's played through them, right? He even won the Super Bowl with a bum ankle. So we'll see. Their next opponents are the Texans. They play them in Kansas City, then the Steelers and the Broncos. So they have a tough schedule towards the end of the year. I hope that they don't rush him back. Like, they can afford to drop a game. They are 2 games ahead of the Bills, but they can't afford to drop 2 games. Because if the Bills win out, then they take the number 1 overall seed because they have the tiebreaker, having handed the only loss of the year to the Kansas City Chiefs. Juju Smith-Schuster had a touchdown to get them up 7-0. Once again, Jameis Winston can't stop throwing picks. He threw 3 interceptions and only 146 yards before DTR came into the game, but it was too late at that point. Nick Bolton played great. He, I guess it was either an interception. I think it was. He had a turnover at one point, and the Chiefs are just kind of slowly, I know this injury has come at a bad time for them, but they're slowly having their playmakers kind of get a groove or get into a groove. Xavier Worthy had a touchdown. As I mentioned, Juju Smith-Schuster made a play. Pacheco is back, and he's running hard. He's still not clearly 100%. Like, Kareem Hunt was playing more snaps, I think, than they would prefer down the stretch. But Kelsey had some big catches. As I mentioned, Pacheco. DeAndre Hopkins is playing a good complementary role. The Chiefs are, as we anticipated, in really good position. But I don't know, Bradley, what do you make of the fact that Mahomes could be sidelined for 1 or maybe 2 games?
I mean, I'm of a few minds about this because it's not as if, the offense, there's been a few games, don't get me wrong, but it's not as if the offense, as usual, has been sort of like blowing the doors off teams. They've obviously, it's sort of been, which is, I think if what I'm about to say is kind of where I'm at with it, I would say it's concerning. Obviously concerning. You're losing Patrick Mahomes, and Patrick Mahomes is Patrick Mahomes. There's nobody really like him to replace him, let alone, an aging Carson Wentz. But the real superpower of the Chiefs, in my view, has been that Mahomes has basically been able to easily synthesize his incredible ability to kind of make the exact kind of like force multiplying play in extremely, extremely pivotal moments to give them just enough of what they need to win a number of these games to keep them where they're at. Like, that type of magic, we talk about it a lot, kind of like the funny thing about whether they've like made a deal with the devil or like are kind of just like that. The thing is, all of that being said, you kind of can't even really approach that if you don't have the guy to do it.
Well, he's playing complimentary football. He's literally said, "I don't care about stats."
Right.
It's clear. It's been clear since last year that is his mindset. He cares about rings and nothing else. And to be honest, if you care about your legacy, like there were a lot of years. I tell you this every time. The first 3 Super Bowls that the Patriots won, that was a defense first team. It was not Tom Brady lighting things up. That was the 3 rings that came a little bit later with the Pats. So doesn't really matter. He's still talked about as the GOAT. Patrick Mahomes has an understanding about that. I totally get it. But it's going to be hard to quantify that effect he has on the team if he's out for multiple weeks. I really hope he doesn't try to play through this, because that could send us into a situation where they're screwed. They have to be smart about this. They have to protect Mahomes from himself. We saw this in the quarterback series with him screaming and slamming his stuff on the ground when he doesn't get to play. He is a competitor of the highest order in a way that, like, it's part of why I respect him as a player so much. So I don't really know what commentary to add. It's just something to watch out for. If Mahomes is out for an extended period, this is an opportunity for the Buffalo Bills. There are a few opportunities that were presented over the weekend. It was for the Bills to maybe nab that number 1 seed, and also for the Vikings to take control of the division with the ravage of injuries that the Lions are dealing with, and the fact that they're going to be playing soon. So we shall see. We talked about the Packers and the Seahawks game. We talked about the Eagles. The Bucs beat the Chargers. Liam Cohen, I think, is going to be a head coaching candidate soon. Like, it sounds like for the second straight year, at least one of the lesser talked about head coach candidates is going to come from the offensive staff of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers.
Which, like, also to me almost makes me feel like is a credit to Todd Bowles too.
Well, maybe, but like, did you see those reports about how he's going to retire? It sounds like someone's trying to will that into existence. Like, the defense looks like shit.
Oh no,
that's his unit that he's supposed to be in control of. Like, maybe make Liam Cohen the head coach. I'm not
even saying in terms of like Bowles.
Hiring.
Yeah. I'm just saying in terms of like his ability to like. The fact that I just think it's a credit to him that he's known, like, I should elevate Canales as well as scouted Liam Cohen to come and saw something in him, whereas it hasn't been the same for a few other kind of like potential like next OC guys up in other areas as much. But I agree with you. I think potentially Bowles' time might just be up in terms of like. He's not that old. He's done a lot already. He's won a Super Bowl. Like he's worked with a lot of really great players. He's shown that he can be a good coordinator and a good head coach in a number of different situations. He survived being the Jets head coach to continue his career. If that were to happen, I agree. I would think it would be. I would think if potentially Bowles does exit on his own or something, it wouldn't be the craziest thing to be like, we have this guy in house already. Why don't we just reward him with how well this offense is played? When people were, I don't think we're fully expecting that after even potentially thinking that last year's stint, especially with Canales leaving, was potentially a fluke for Baker and this team. Maybe give Cohen a shot to see what he can do as like an executive. Obviously, we don't know what his skills would be like in that front, but I don't think it's the craziest idea in the world to be like, hey, this guy is giving us a real jolt here. Why not give him a shot?
Yeah.
Instead of letting him leave and potentially him having a lot of success elsewhere.
We'll see what happens with the Falcons tonight. The Falcons play the 2 worst teams in the NFL in back-to-back weeks. They play the Raiders and then the Giants at home next week. After that, they play the Commanders and then the Panthers. So the Falcons, in theory, have a really easy path, but the Bucs isn't that hard too. Next week, they play the Cowboys, who look a lot better, but still are beatable. And the Bucs, I think, and the Cowboys are pretty similar in terms of skill level. Then they play the Panthers and then the Saints, who are going to be a pretty easy out, is my guess for the rest of the year. Although I will say that they should keep starting Spencer Rattler, and Haener was pretty atrocious, and they had an actual shot when they put Rattler back, or when they put Rattler in the game in the second half.
Haener is not built. Haener is not built for this NFL.
Not built. I mean,
Haener, if Haener was a quarterback in like 1994, he'd probably be like top top 18.
No, he would not be even. What is his size? He would not be even considered in 1984 because they would have wanted a big.
They would have wanted him to be like 6'4". He's probably like
6'1", but he doesn't look it.
Yeah, but 6'1" still even like at the time of like Elway and Marino and like those were bigger.
Those were big guys.
Yeah, to begin
Elway
with. It's a good point.
Elway is Josh Allen before Josh Allen. So like the.
Yeah, but Rattler, I feel like, did give them a little bit more,
Yeah.
at least just like kind of like risk taking and stuff like that, like as opposed to Haener.
They almost won it. If they got that 2-point conversion at the end of the game, they would have upset the Commanders, who the Saints shut down later on in the game. And when Rattler came in, it gave them a big boost. But the Bucs and the Falcons are going to be in competition for the 4 seed in the NFC South, and both of them have decently easy paths forward. I think a lot's going to hinge on tonight. Can Kirk Cousins stop the skid? Can he stop the slide? Can he stop throwing all these interceptions? It helps that the Raiders are freaking tanking, but we shall see. Like, I think this could be a trap game for them. Maybe I'm trying to will it into existence so the Giants get the first overall pick, but be that as it may, the Falcons have not been playing well, and the Bucs can seal this. And the fact that the Falcons swept the Bucs and still are not in the driver's seat in this division is crazy. And it just, I guess it just speaks to the gutsiness of the way that the Buccaneers play football, even though it looks like Baker Mayfield is just getting thrown about and thrashed around all the time. Bucky Irving has been a phenomenal rookie running back, probably the best rookie running back in the NFL by a wide margin.
I am very impressed because I feel like the draft discourse around him was mostly that he was like athletically gifted but a little bit one directional / one dimensional, meaning in the sense of like he didn't have a lot of kind of like side to side agility and creativity. He was more of kind of like a straight line, kind of like not that creative of a runner. But I feel like we're seeing him use so much of his agility and his body control and kind of the way he's able to very fluidly move his body in between tackles, where I'm like, every run that he shoots off, even if it's somewhat of a failure, I'm always like, it always seems as if he's getting 2 to 3 more yards every carry than he has business getting.
Yeah.
Like, that's what I really admire about his game, is like he's never giving the defense, even in kind of like a run-of-the-mill rushing play, an easy out. It's never like, oh, he's getting stuffed at the line. Like, it's so rare that I see him. It's obviously anecdotal, but it's so rare when I'm watching him play that I see him get just stuffed at the line as the play gets snapped. Like, he's just always finding a way to get north at least like 2 to 4 yards if he's not shooting off for a big play.
Right. He's fundamentally sound and he's strong as hell, and that helps a lot in the NFL. I did not mean to make that rhyme. But the Chargers really, I think, showed their... First of all, Herbert is not 100%. It seemed like he got banged up, like his ankle was a part of a sack or a tackle that befell him, and it just seemed like he was struggling all game. But like, this is the limitations of the Chargers. If they can't play ball control, if you get some explosive plays on that defense, which is what the Buccaneers basically do. They're feast or famine. They're throwing interceptions, but they're also throwing bombs to Mike Evans or Jalen McMillan at this point. They can beat you. And the Chargers, if they can't control the pace of the game, and this is the limits of, like, I think their roster to a degree, but also sometimes Jim Harbaugh's philosophy, it presents some issues for them. We'll see. If the Chargers are the 7 seed, I'm a little concerned for them, because the idea of them having to go to Buffalo if things hold, I do not see them winning that game. I see the Bills blowing them out, but we'll see. I mean, it seems like it's either going to be the Broncos or the Ravens or the Steelers who take the 5 seed. So the Chargers should probably try to rack up some wins while they can, so they aren't stuck in the 7 seed, because that could be a pretty bad situation, especially if they're going to Buffalo. Speaking of those Broncos, they basically knocked the Colts out of playoff contention yesterday.
This was a bizarre game from start to finish.
The Colts
it was
were
just
up.
a strange situation the whole time.
Once again, the Anthony Richardson-led Colts are not completing passes in any, like, I mean, damn. What was his stat line here? I can't find it. I thought I had it in front of me. Anthony Richardson.
My guess is that it was weird.
Yeah, let's see. It's not in front of me at this moment. Bradley, if you don't mind pulling that up, just let me know. But Anthony Richardson, it started off okay. Bo Nix uncharacteristically threw 3 interceptions in this game.
So I knew it was weird. He was 17 of 30. He was 17 of 38 for 172 yards and 2 interceptions.
Okay, so that is still below
50%.
50%.
Yeah. And no touchdowns, just 2 picks.
Yeah. And the thing that changed the game is I know that that play is going viral about
Jonathan Taylor.
The interception.
Oh, sorry. You're talking about the trick play interception.
The trick play interception for a touchdown.
Which again, an insane play by Nick Bonito, like an absolutely insane play.
What are the defensive player of the year odds right now?
Bonito should be. I know obviously it's people don't usually give it to
He's not even in the. It's
kind of crazy.
As of right now, it's really T.J. Watt, Pat Surtain, Xavier McKinney. My God. Will Anderson, Myles Garrett.
That's crazy.
Nick Bonito should
at least have a nod, be on people's ballots.
Right. I mean, I think it's probably just because
just not a
Surtain is taking up all of the votes on that
secondary.
Team. It's
and Broncos. Right. I didn't even think about that.
He's worthy of it too. But Nick Bonito has been making plays all over the field this year. He is lightning quick at his position. So the Colts were up, I think it was 13-7, and then they never scored again because it was the hex of Jonathan Taylor running into the end zone when they were up 13-7 and they should have gone up 20-7. He dropped the ball before he crossed the goal line.
I feel like
early celebration, no one near him, and fumbled it out of the back of the end
zone.
There
must be some sort of intervention that teams do where they just I don't know what must happen to drill it into players' heads to be just hold on to the ball even when the play is called dead and it's a touchdown. Hang on to the ball. Don't ever drop the ball.
I don't. It's because they're excited. Their adrenaline's flowing through him. He wanted to celebrate, but what do you know? They never scored again after it would have potentially been somewhat decisive.
I was like, oh my God, the Colts are gonna win this game, and then it just
I know
the tide turns so quickly.
I mean, it was crazy. They just scored. I don't know what they were 31-7, 24 unanswered.
Right.
The Broncos did, and they easily wrapped up that game. They're going to be a tough out in the playoffs, no matter who they play. Sean Payton is smart as hell. Bo Nix, he did not have a good game with all those turnovers, but
that defense is going to keep them in.
Oh yeah,
that's where I think they are just so talented all across the board of that defense comprehensively, and it's not easy even against a Colts team that we've obviously talked about that has been pretty underwhelming offensively and is still working through a lot of kinks of just what exactly they are. But still, for Bonito to sniff out that trick play of exactly to sort of backpedal, realize that the ball was potentially going to come back across the line of scrimmage, and essentially
then hide and then accelerate
and essentially pick off a screen, was just that is insane play recognition. Yeah. And the fact that as you were just saying, the fact that in the conversation of best defensive players, he's number 2 on his own team to who is the best cornerback in the league?
Surtain's the best corner in the league. Yeah.
It's
although
extraordinary.
I thought Quinyon Mitchell is
I know he's so
rookie.
Good. He's already so good.
He's already top 3, I would say. Well, the other one, we're doing great transitions today. Derek Stingley is up there too. Definitely.
He had it right, and that to have that was a big moment to seal the game with a pick against Tua in that Dolphins Texans game as well.
I mean, I honestly want to correct my statement and essentially say that I think I would take, as of right now, Stingley over Quinyon Mitchell, although in the future, perhaps I'd invest in Quinyon Mitchell more, but if on my Super Bowl team right now, Stingley is playing great. Yesterday, he had 3 tackles, 2 interceptions, 2 tackles for a loss.
Stat line.
And he was just phenomenal on Tyreek Hill. Tyreek Hill had 2 catches for 36 yards.
Right, and that's so hard to do, especially because Stingley is a long-limbed, prototypical corner. There are times where a guy like Tyreek Hill, he's being probably one of, if not the fastest guy in the league, could potentially, stifle and kind of beguile a corner like Stingley. But Stingley is just so sticky on guys, and he has beyond like sort of like Surtain, but Surtain's kind of in his own category. It's like there's nothing he really doesn't do well. Like he's just so well rounded, and you can see, especially, which I'm very, very impressed by. Obviously, we've talked about this over a number of years. Having the injury break between like his incredible first start of his college career.
That's why I thought it was a bad draft pick. I was like third overall. Are you joking me?
And then
he's barely played.
Right. And then as we see him at his when we see him at his full complement of health and skills, it's like that's why, because if anything, the injury was for sure the exception, not the rule of like what this guy is as a player. And so the Texans, we've obviously talked about so much this year. It's such a mixed bag with them. It's so hard to like parse what's real and what isn't.
I gotta take them out of the Super Bowl conversation.
I agree.
They're playing complementary football. They're doing their best, but this offense,
the offense is so much more.
What is Slowick doing? It's so regressed.
Totally, the offense is regressed in a way where it's like just doesn't seem like there are any answers in the run game. Stroud seems so under duress the whole time. He's doing as much as he possibly can. It just doesn't seem like anything's really gelling together. But the only thing I think it would be is a real calling card right now for them in the playoffs is just the fact that they really do have such a solid, well-rounded, well-coached team overall, but the defense in particular, just like a bunch of real dogs on the front seven, and having Stingley back there to kind of like call sort of be the leader of that secondary is really, really key as well.
Okay, and happy Nico Collins, my king, got back in the line, or he's still been back, but now he's kind of like revving up his engine again. He got 2 touchdowns.
Huge, yeah.
Are we ready to talk about Tua again? 3 interceptions in that game.
Yeah, and this Tua did
including one in the red zone after they could have tied it. They were down 20-12.
Tua did not honor my prediction on Thursday of doing more with his legs and reigniting the Dolphins offense.
I mean, he did rush for a second, and I saw it. He rushed. Maybe it got called back, but I saw him dive forward once again, not sliding, diving forward with his head.
Yep.
I just gotta say this about this dude, this Trump supporter evangelical. You're just dumb. Like, enough of this. I don't like him as a person. I think he's arguably the most overrated player in the league, although now people are starting to catch up to how he's just like a product of this Mike McDaniel system. And Mike McDaniel is being set up as the patsy to once again save Tua. So we'll do this again. Brian Flores is the problem with Tua. Now Mike McDaniel is the problem with Tua. It's everybody except Tua, the guy making over $50 million a year, who also can't throw in weather that's under 40 degrees, apparently.
McDaniel's is Oswald.
It's just I don't know what Chris Greer and the owner have, like, this obsession with Tua. The extension was insane, given his contract history, given the fact that he's a product of this system. Trump supporting miracle water believing freaking nut job dumbass. Like, I don't like Tua. I don't like his victim complex. You are making a bunch of money, and you're like one of the worst parts of your entire team, and you're making the most on the entire roster. So enough of this guy. I'm done with it.
It's kind of crazy, especially looking back at, I still think about his answer he gave to the question about the Guardian cap. And again, it's not as if, listen, the Guardian cap is not a panacea. We've obviously know that there's some, but at the same time, basically the question independent of the actual specific technology is like, will you take further precautions to ensure your safety? And he literally treated it like, fucking
next question.
Like, and like Rudy Gobert was being asked about the COVID vaccine.
Like,
that's literally what it came across like. Saying personal choice is like literally like your brain is broken by the media that you're consuming to say personal choice when talking about a fucking helmet.
Okay, and I'm sorry, but I saw Romeo Dobbs wearing the Guardian cap in that game last night. I didn't know this until they did the
loser.
I didn't know this until they did the slow motion of his touchdown, and he was wearing that Guardian cap. And you know what? It looked fine. It looks fine. Put a hard casing around it. Figure something out. Make the helmets a little bigger. It's fine. Like, these caps, if they do anything to save these guys' brains from taking the pounding that they do, please just try to formalize this in the NFL before Like the NFL seemingly only reacts to situations like this. If someone dies on the field, you better watch out for litigation, NFL. If you didn't do your due diligence about researching if these guardian caps could help the situation. Because they got their scare with Damar Hamlin. I know this wasn't concussion related. It was more of a freak situation that could have happened even in a baseball game if you get hit in a specific area with a pitch. It honestly wasn't specific to football. But the fact that they made him into that mascot of how inspiring, love Damar Hamlin. What do you mean this is inspiring? The guy is one of these players that you don't pay too much money. I think he was on his rookie deal at this point, who was in a life-threatening situation, and then you've made him into like, I don't know, they made him into a feel-good story out of whole cloth.
A call was made to a factory in Thailand, like, immediately like, pump these shirts out like they're going out of style.
Exactly.
We need NFL family merch. Pray for Damar.
The only feel-good thing about it was the Bills being such a close-knit, lovely team where they cared about their guy and all the coaching staff and even, how the Bengals players reacted in that situation. The NFL capitalizing on it like they did with that PR push, you guys know what that was, right? It was to distract from the fact that the guy almost died on the field. And I think that's very cynical. So, all right, so a few more games that we can get to here. We mentioned that the Washington Commanders kind of just got by the skin of their teeth. The Bengals beat the Titans. I thought this was a sneaky trap game because of the connection with Brian Callahan and if he was going to be able to give them an understanding of their scheme. But turns out Will Levis will be Will Levis. He threw a pick six.
Just Johnny Knoxville at quarterback.
Then Mason Rudolph came in.
Every Will Levis game should start off with the theme music to Jackass.
I know. And like they're going to be in the market for a quarterback in this draft. Like we'll see how the Raiders do tonight, but they're also a 3-win team. I'm not necessarily sure how the strength of schedule thing works out.
And it's funny because it's interesting to think that like there's so many. What's weird to me about the Titans team is because like they're obviously bad, but there are strengths on this roster from the young guys that I almost feel is overshadowed by kind of how ineffective the vets are on the team, in the sense that with Bill Callahan in the fold as offensive line coach, Peter Skoronski's already looked so much better than he did last year, and him and J.C. Latham together are just like a very, very formidable duo on the offensive line as two very young players. And Tavondre Sweat, who had like some character concerns and size concerns because he's like, at his biggest, he could almost be pushing like 400 pounds, despite being such an athletic freak. He is really, really stood out in playing nose tackle or playing in the middle of that front seven. He got recovered a fumble and just stiff armed the shit out of the guy.
Yes, I can't believe that probably shouldn't have been upheld, but it was almost like that kind of situation where it was like
it was too cool, it was too sick,
too hilarious.
Yeah, we can't overturn it. It's too sick.
Yeah.
Whereas I'm just like I think Levis is kind of becoming clear he's like not really the answer, obviously. And they're just not really figuring out what to do with the presence of Calvin Ridley, who's like sort of marginalized in some ways, despite being the kind of big ticket free agent signing that they got last season.
And it's hard for me to determine if that's Ridley's fault or if it's the
That's
offense,
right. It's hard to say. Right.
He was very much hot and cold when he was in Jacksonville, and it's almost like he hasn't regained his form fully after leaving Atlanta.
Right.
But it's more than Calvin Ridley. It's more like the team does, I think, need a refresh on offense.
Yes, definitely.
As you're saying, though, there's some positives with the way that their defense has been playing. And Latham, right. I have high hopes for.
Totally.
Yeah.
But I think it just goes to show, sort of as you're saying, like, it's good to have some flashes, but clearly they need a lot more to, like, kind of fit up and, like, bolster this roster.
And yet another game where Joe Burrow carries the entire team. And he's throwing more interceptions this year, but that's just because he literally
has to push the ball.
He's got to push the ball or they can't win anything. I mean, it's honestly like, have the Titans scored 27 points all year? I mean, this is like
I'm so upset. Like, it's like Burrow, even with the picks, like, he is literally playing
MVP,
his best football.
If it wasn't for Josh Allen, right, and if it wasn't for their record, right, he would be the MVP.
Like, he's playing his best football for a season that is not going to matter at all.
Not going to matter at all.
It is literally playing to play out the string. Like, it is so upsetting. And then he got robbed.
Yeah. It's it really is just so unfortunate, this organization that like just has not spent any money on defense, and then they're being cheap with the best receiver in the NFL, Jamar Chase, who, if they paid him last offseason, he would have matched the Justin Jefferson contract. He's now going to lap JJ by like a lot. So good job, Mike Brown. Once again, you played yourself and you waited way too long, and Jamar Chase is going to make bank way more than he would have made last year, and you screwed your team in the process.
And I just think it's what really pisses me off about it is like you have made it so that and first of all, like T. Higgins, Jamar Chase, and Joe Burrow have essentially saved this front office from having like a run of like historically embarrassing top 100 picks over the last like 5 drafts. And even amidst that, they have the gall to be like, yeah, we're going to think about paying these guys. It's like, this team would be the worst team in the NFL without those 3 guys.
Oh, yeah.
Like, would be like a bottom 5 team.
It absolutely would.
They are being elevated by just so happening to have a top 5 quarterback and arguably the best wide receiver in the league outside of Justin Jefferson. Like,
I would take him over Jefferson tomorrow. I mean, I love Justin Jefferson. I love him. But
yeah, I think it's fair. I think it's fair. You can say
he's
I don't
more
think
of an athletic freak,
right.
And I will always in their prime. I'm taking Tyreek Hill over I'm taking Devontae Adams every time,
right?
Because I just think that does more than like what people see on the screen. People see the statistics, and like for a guy like Devontae, I think that just JJ is a rich man's Devontae Adams. Like
probably markets
probably models his game.
Right. That's what I meant. He's sort of models his game after him too. Right.
And I like Justin Jefferson is a top 3 receiver, like total stud. But I will always kind of go with the guy that can take the top off the defense and does things that you don't see on the stat sheet, like creates opportunities for other players. Like, and I know, and the problem is just that Justin Jefferson's injury history isn't Jamar Chase. You could make a case that like, oh, maybe he gets a little bit more injured, but he just has that speed, that straight line speed where it's like, whew.
And the toughness and to combine it with the toughness, the strength, and the catch, the fact that he can. I mean, similar to the thing. I think a similarity with him and Justin is that their catchability is just so insane. Like they can just bring down any ball basically.
Yeah.
But that's I think what's so frustrating to me is like you're gonna respond by really lucking into some like genuinely generational talent at quarterback, at wide receiver 1, and even at wide receiver 2 with Higgins despite the injuries. And the response to all of them except like basically Burrow is to like basically piss off.
Yeah.
Like it's just like it's like flushing money down the toilet.
I know.
It's just such a waste.
Well, for him, it doesn't. For Brown, it doesn't really matter because they take 50% anyway, and they have all the equity, and they also just TV money. Like that's why they made money in the pandemic.
They're gonna let T. Higgins sign. They're gonna let T. Higgins sign with the Packers or something, and then, or sign with the Ravens or something, and be like, and Mike Brown's just gonna respond with being like, the popcorn at the stadium should be 5 cents more.
Yeah, exactly.
Meeting adjourned.
The Jets beat the Jaguars. I don't have too much to say about this. We referenced it earlier. Whatever.
Great.
Yeah, poor Evan Ingram.
Fart noise.
He got injured in this game. The Giants.
Not laughing at Evan Ingram's injury, to be clear.
Yes,
I'm just laughing at like anyone having any sort of like positive response to the Jets winning.
The Ravens covered against the Giants. Woohoo! Lamar Jackson was just a stud all game. The way he was throwing the football was beautiful. Those Rashad Bateman touchdowns, both of them, were gorgeous. There was a point where Tim Boyle came into the game because Tommy DeVito got a concussion, and he looked way better than Tommy DeVito, by the way. Finally, Malik Neighbors got back into the end zone. He's trying to get to that 1,000-yard season. Tank, baby. I don't really have much to say about that either. The Carolina Panthers, looks like Bryce Young kind of regressed when faced with the juggernaut that is Micah Parsons, who is finally back, full health, looking like a stud out there.
It's
Happy to see him back out there.
Even despite unfortunately losing and very tragically losing DeMarvion Overshown to a tough multi-ligament leg injury.
Oh, God.
And he was really coming out and playing some great football for them in the spine of their defense. It has been nice, especially nice for the Cowboys to have Parsons back on the field because he is just, even for a defense that has looked somewhat dysfunctional and also not having Trayvon Diggs for the rest of the season, Parsons is just such a floor raiser. Like just having one guy like that who is literally like the first or like the top 3 defensive players in the entire league just shifts the calculus so much for a team.
Right. And even like they were still able to turn Bryce Young over a bunch of times. Right. One was an interception. At the very least, maybe at least one, or no, he threw 2. And then also there was Bryce Young did a little juke and spun around and tried to get the defender to miss, and he was successful. And then as he was diving forward for like the down and distance, ball popped out, fumbled, and it was like the coolest, most athletic move that I've seen from him.
Like, oh, that's so sick! It's
outside,
like, oh no,
outside of like behind, like ahead of the line of scrimmage, basically. Right. And unfortunate for him that didn't work out as well. The Cardinals defeated the Patriots. This was one of Drake May's worst games, at least from a visual perspective. Well, maybe not. I'm looking at his stats. It wasn't too bad, but it felt like it was all between the 20s and not like that much, and they didn't have that much success on offense.
And I think some of his reads were a little bit predictable, which is why he was able to get turned over 1 or 2 times. I know Sean Murphy Bunting had it was sort of
interception.
It was sort of a bobbled play, but I think it was just because sort of the Cardinals were kind of all over it. Like, because they were sort of closing in, there was a bobble, and then Murphy Bunting was in the right place at the right time to get the pick. But you know, I can totally excuse or understand. You know, he's a rookie. He's playing
way better than we thought. With this is house money. Cast.
This is house money at this point for next year.
It was interesting because the Cardinals just decided that they were going to run on the Patriots the entire time, and James Conner just like was all over the field after he got that extension. He had 110 yards on the ground and 2 rushing touchdowns, and the Cardinals, I wish that they had pulled out 1 or 2 more games because I really like the way that they play. And I think that they can win in multiple ways on offense. They can run the ball with James Conner and even Kyler Murray if he chooses to do so, or they can sort of win through the passing game. Like Marvin Harrison had a nice catch. That part of their game still needs to be like fleshed out, but they're on the up and up, and it's exciting.
But we are seeing what Marvin Harrison Jr. did struggle with, which was getting significant amounts of separation on his routes. As in he is an incredible route running technician, but like actually kind of really breaking away from guys, as well as.
Do you want to know how much shit my guy Chris Sims took for putting him number 3 in his wide receiver rankings after Malik Neighbors and Brian Thomas Jr.? And it was for that reason. And he's being proven correct.
And I would say especially look at the game Brian Thomas Jr. had yesterday. Like, I still think potentially, like, you know, he has the explosiveness and the speed of a slot guy with that frame, and you're not really getting while you're getting really crisp route running from Marvin Harrison Jr. and you're getting pretty good to great catch point skills. The separation and the yards after the catch ability does still leave something to be desired. I think that we're still seeing. I think I sort of thought he was going to have like a supernova season. And it definitely is not. I don't think it's panned out that way yet.
Right.
I don't think it's impossible. I'm just saying I think there are certain things where it's like, oh, okay, that is an actual, I think, limitation for him to continue to work on. And I do think this team is still so young on both sides of the ball that I still think that there is a little bit of ways to go. I thought maybe they could have been like in that Lions year when they beat the Packers to keep them out of the playoffs. I still think they're almost like a little bit away from that still. I don't think they're there yet.
No, but
I still think they need to kind of add more on defense and sort of iron out the offense a little bit more.
And they need a guy that can take the top off the top of the defense. Like, I do think that when they signed Hollywood Brown a few years ago or traded for him, that was the right idea. You know, I do think they need to stretch the field a little bit more. Yes. And Kyler Murray has the arm and they're in a dome.
Yes, 100%. Yeah. Absolutely.
So, I mean, we'll see. But I do think that, like, I just like way more what I'm seeing from them than when we anticipated with Jonathan Gannon acting like Kendall Roy.
No, he has absolutely been like the opposite for me. Like, oh, like I totally thought my first impression was going to be right about him as a coach, and he's actually, I think, like doing totally fine. Like those Eagles coordinators really did have something.
Guess so. Yeah. Lastly, we're done with the games that we had on Sunday. Tonight, there's 2 games, 2 pretty significant ones. There's the Falcons and the Raiders that I mentioned, and then there's also the Vikings are playing tonight against the Bears. Yes, so we'll see. I don't care. I'll be watching the Tank Bowl just because I'm rooting so hard for the Raiders. But
is Kirk playing or no?
He is playing.
Okay.
They're riding with Kirk.
Okay, got it. So playing the Raiders, and the Raiders are starting Desmond Ridder?
No. No. I don't know.
Because I only say that because I think Minshew's out for the season and Andy O'Connell got injured.
You're right.
Oh boy,
You're right.
Desmond Ridder revenge game. Let's go.
So what did you think about Travis Hunter winning the Heisman?
I think it's great that it wasn't just a quarterback, and also, I mean, Ashton Genty is a great player, and I understand why it was close, but I just feel like we haven't had a guy. I mean, obviously, it's of course not lost on me that we haven't had a guy like Travis Hunter since his coach, but I think he's a real star, and I think that I think he is like. He's somebody who I think for even people who casually watch college football or will casually watch the NFL will be like, I think like my mom could see that Travis Hunter is like a star.
Yep.
And like not really know anything about football.
Oh yeah, he's the kind of guy where it's like I showed one time my best friend. I showed her. She hates sports. I showed her. I was like, just please let me watch Lamar Jackson highlights with me. And she was like, "Whoa,
yeah,
whoa.
that's
what Travis
right,
Hunter
exactly.
is. Yeah. Another Heisman winner.
His athletic ability, his technical ability, and also the one thing I also appreciate about him is like he almost like has like. He's kind of like, he almost has like hockey guy brain. He literally is like, I sit, I play video games, I hang out with my wife, and I play football.
Yeah.
Like he was like, oh, Lil Wayne, nice to meet you. Like, I didn't really know your music before my wife showed it to you. I'm like, do you like?
Well, how old is he?
But he sort of was like, but the reason I say this is he sort of was like, yeah, I don't really like listen to music.
Oh.
And I'm like, oh, okay. So like you literally like play football like you play football, then like go home and like hang out with your fiance, play video games, go to sleep, and then do that again.
Yep, that's basically his whole life.
Like he's just like, and I'm not even saying like, oh, like that makes him a good guy. I just more mean like he has like singular focus, and he just does not seem problematic or like kind of does not exhibit anything sort of like that could be exploited or utilized against him, especially in the NIL kind of like Colorado-fication of college sports. Like he doesn't seem to be fully into that vortex as much as Shedeur does, which I get. Shedeur's father is Deion. It's a separate story when you're literally related to Deion Sanders.
Yeah.
But I just think the future is very bright for him. And my follow-up question, because given of how much I like Hunter, and I think he's such a kind of like generational prospect. Would you be fine if the Giants took him?
No.
Okay. So it would still.
I am in full. I have been waiting to reveal this. I am in full blown love with Cam Ward.
Okay, got it.
Like I am obsessed with Cam Ward, and I've been watching all of his games. I've been watching all of his interviews and highlights, and I will be almost devastated if they take Shedeur Sanders, who I saw was throwing passes in New York City in the middle of the street like a total jackass with
Shedeur
with Malik Neighbors,
right?
The only jackass in that situation is Shedeur. Why? Because I'm biased.
Right. Right.
I don't want this. I'm already seeing the circus.
I don't like the Deion.
I'm seeing the circus, like, and
it's fine where he is. I just if it transitions to the NFL as Shedeur gets if it just continues to elevate as Shedeur gets older, like to me, I'm like that's like now it's like LeVar Ball is becoming an NFL coach. Like that's like I don't need that.
I don't want to disrespect Deion to say that he's like LeVar Ball because he has the pedigree and the smarts and like the football acumen and career to back it up.
And he wins where he goes. Like he won at Jackson State. Colorado's getting better. Like I get it. He's talented. There's no question.
John Mara, who wants to be Wellington daddy so badly. The last time that the Giants took a franchise quarterback, it was a pedigree guy, son of an NFL legend in Archie Manning. There's also the rumblings that the Giants could want to wait to take the other Manning, Arch. Right. Next year.
So that was my question is like, what if there's a situation where they take Hunter and then draft Arch Manning afterwards?
But how can you ensure that? So I have to endure another season of this.
Yeah,
I have to
that's
endure
the thing.
another season of this. We just stayed with Daniel Jones for 6 seasons, Bradley.
I don't think you. I actually don't think. I don't really think. It's one of those things where, sure, maybe the quarterbacks are not technically like the number one player on the board, but like if you're in that position and you being the Giants and the Raiders are in that position, you got like the Giants and the Raiders are taking quarterbacks. Fact. That's just that with a bullet. Like that's like they are taking a quarterback.
I have seen enough. Like I'm sorry. I don't think like an NFL scout, and I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm just an amateur, whatever. I know his motion looks a little weird. It's like a little bit too compact, and perhaps you need more touch from him. He can throw the seam like a son of a bitch, and like it looks good. I don't know why I'm talking like this.
Because you're scouting. You're grinding the tape.
I am grinding the tape. He can throw a seam. He can improvise. He's cool under pressure. He's a football like psycho. He's been through a ton of adversity. He came from a system.
Very competitive.
Very competitive.
Yeah.
He came from a system in high school where they barely barely threw the football. So he got like, I forget what the name of the program was, but he's transferred twice before he went to Miami. He's the kind of guy that NFL scouts or like Todd McShay or whatever, or Mel Kiper, he doesn't have the Alabama pedigree or like hasn't basically been a 5-star recruit through all of his life. Shedeur is that guy. That was who Bryce Young was. I think that sometimes those players, and I know it's not Alabama, but Shedeur has that college hype, like that system hype from all of these college guys that think he's really exciting. He's fundamentally sound. His footwork is phenomenal. He can go through his reads. You can plug Shedeur, I think, into most NFL teams, and he can start. Cam Ward has like star potential. And that's what I'm after in the draft.
Yeah, so Cam Ward went to one of my favorite Christian schools names. He went to the school with one of my favorite college names, which is Incarnate Word.
Yeah,
just like the most Christian school ass name, and then Washington State after, and then was at Miami because and. So here's my you want to hear my hot take prediction?
Mm-hmm. Prediction?
Yeah, for the draft.
Okay.
So I think
we don't know what the order is going to be.
So I think the Raiders are going to get the first overall pick.
Okay, you think?
And I think they're going to fire Antonio Pierce, and then I think they're going to draft Shedeur and hire Dion, and then the Giants will get Cam Ward at 2.
Okay.
I really think there's a distinct chance that a team takes the Shedeur Dion package, and it's gonna make me extremely unhappy, but I think it's possible.
That would be hilarious.
Yeah, like I think a team could.
That actually could be interesting. I mean, look,
just because I think there's absolutely an owner out there who's like, why would I not take Dion's son and then take Dion as well?
Well, if it's my team, I don't want it, but I would be interested to see how it plays out on another team.
But and for it to be Vegas potentially, like I just think it's like it honestly is like almost like you couldn't write it in a more kind of like maximalist, like kind of almost like surreal way of seeing how the NFL season could go next year. That like Mark Davis owned team gets Shedeur Sanders and his dad.
Oh, it would so be for them. Although I'm a little worried for like if Dion wants to coach in the NFL, there's a chance he can demand a high price, and we know that Mark Davis does not like to spend money.
He's like, no, I'm gonna watch WNBA games.
But like, this is the kind of place where Dion could be happy to live in Las Vegas, like stone's throw away from LA, where I'm sure like they have a house.
And they won't even have to go that far. You wouldn't even have to go that far from Colorado to get there.
That's true.
It's like a drive.
Even though I'm saying I wouldn't want my team to do it, you should do it.
It would be a crazy move for the mayor. The mayors are so risk averse in my view. I can't even. It's just unimaginable to me.
Like Irish Catholic fucking.
Yeah, just like tight-lipped. Like just no way.
There's just I mean, back in the. They cursed themselves by firing their Irish Catholic brethren, Tom Coughlin. It's a
cardinal sin.
The Giants should be a New England conservative kind of team, we'll vote for Mitt Romney, but we're not voting for Trump. That's the vibe that the Giants put up. Not Deion Sanders vibe.
Right.
Anyway.
Imagine John Mara talking to, hey Dion,
I hope the Giants take. I actually think that Vrabel would be a good fit for the Giants.
Oh, agreed.
Or Chicago.
I think he's going to be coveted.
100%.
In a
He
number
should
of
be.
different organizations. Yeah.
Anyway, that's that. We'll read some IMs and get out of here. Small D Democrat, don't forget about Devin Witherspoon. I never did.
Yeah.
Small D Democrat, there's a good chance we see Tua die on the field, and I really don't want to see it. It would be awful. Yes, that would be bad. Paper Liger, Bradley, it is called autism. Like, referring to Travis Hunter.
Oh,
Yes, well, I never took that test that Hassan took, but
video is
my
so funny.
best friend is a psychologist, and she told me within like 2 months that we met that she thought I was on the spectrum because of my specialized interests and focus. I'll take it. But Travis Hunter may be a little bit further along.
He's just like, yeah, I don't listen to music. I'm like, okay.
Okay.
What? I wasn't familiar with your game. Lil Wayne, literally Lil Wayne in front of you.
Now from Trinidad, Emma and Bradley, can the Tampa Bay Bucks be a dark horse candidate in the playoffs? Remember, they had beat the Lions and Eagles this season. I mean, I think that they're so explosive that they can do anything, but their defense is like really, really bad. And also, the problem is that Baker Mayfield, I don't know if his interceptions in the and turnovers in the regular season are going to translate as well in the postseason. And the final IM of the day. Kowalski from Nebraska. The universe is very much trying to get me to go to New York to watch the Huskers play in that bowl game. A seed corn company. We do a lot of business as a promotion to us for selling seed. Has offered us 4 tickets for the game or a Milwaukee leaf blower, which honestly might be one of the most redneck things that has ever been said. You should go, Kowalski. Come over, hang out. All right, guys. With that, we're going to wrap up. We will see you later this week. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.